John, thank you for having me. Excited to be here and meet your audience.
So, man, when you introduce yourself to audiences for the first time, and if you have to like string out an elevator pitch, what do you
Yeah.
say?
I was born legally blind. No vision in my right eye, it's totally blind. My left eye is mostly blind. I see out of a really tiny hole. By my seventh grade year, I started playing football. Growing up, I was picked last for every sport you could ever imagine. I was picked on, I was bullied, I was being legally blind was my identity, and found myself sophomore year of high school as a third string junior varsity athlete. And up until that point, like I said, being legally blind controlled so much of me. I wanted to make a change. I found a way to make a change, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Ended up playing football at Tulane University, where I became the first legally blind Division One athlete to play in a game. Was named a team captain and went on to become an NFL free agent. And now I'm an entrepreneur, a speaker, a consultant, and I travel all over.
Most times when you hear someone kind of pitch themselves or give a quick snapshot of their life story, you may find yourself yawning at some point in that sentence. Now with you, Aaron, I think people are leaning in and grabbing their pens and getting ready to take notes. I know I am. It is an incredible life you've lived, and it's just starting. So, as powerful as it is today, I want to take you back a little bit to when you were a baby. I know you have two older siblings. Talk about your family growing up.
Yeah, my parents, I always say, did a phenomenal job raising me for a couple reasons, and I owe a lot of credit to them. But, being legally blind, my parents knew that I'd be challenged in so many ways that other kids weren't. And I had to find a way to build resilience and build perseverance when I was young. And if I didn't, I'd probably struggle and fall down and fail a lot more later on in life. And so, most kids, I always use the example. You're 5 years old, try and tie your shoes, get out of your house. Your
Right.
parents want to just rush you out and get you to the car. Most parents tie the shoes for them, get the kids in the car. My parents would stand back, they'd cross their arms, they'd look at me, and they'd go, Aaron, go figure it out. And they'd wait because they wanted me to be challenged because that would develop so many things within me over time.
Listen, dude, I have four kids. I once was a child. I frequently act like a child still, and I hate when people don't help me do things that I really, really struggle with. So as you're trying to get out of the house and make it to school on time, and you're looking up through your one eye that can barely see in the first place at your parents who are, standing there with their arms crossed watching, what's rolling through your mind as a 7-year-old?
I mean, it's tough, it's frustrating. Obviously, if it was taking me forever, my parents would help me or show me what I had to do, but it's teaching you, not just me, anyone who has a challenge, anyone who has a disability, anyone who has a limitation, that they're normal, that they're the same, that they can do things. And I think so often in society, one of the things I talk with companies about all the time is how we have this misconception of what people who are different or have a disability can and can't do. And we want to make it easier on them. And it's understandable. I always come from the perception of people don't know what they don't know, and they always mean well. People 99% of the time are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But oftentimes when someone has a disability or limitation, people baby them. My parents wanted to do the opposite. They wanted to push me. They wanted to show that I was normal. They wanted to show that I could do the same things as others. It might take me a little longer, but they wanted to develop that.
So there was a movie that came out just recently called Soul on Fire, and little John O'Leary, after he comes home from the hospital, there's a scene that Sony actually had to shorten, and it's the scene where John is learning how to eat again after having his fingers amputated. And when they first shot it, it went on for a couple minutes, and then the audience says that's not nice parenting. A good parent would help. And so they shortened it to like 60 seconds. And then ultimately they shortened it even more than that because so many folks these days thought that what those parents were doing for that child was abusive. Watching him passively, seemingly, as he struggles with the fork, unable to feed himself. You, my friend, had that same experience a million times over in your life. The struggle of picking up the fork, the struggle of tying the shoe. And I'm sure as you were going through that adversity, you were asking the question, Mom and Dad, why won't you help me? Or God, how could you let me suffer through this? So for you as a little one, we'll talk about you more mature later on, but you as a little kid, what's going through your mind when you were struggling?
It's challenging. It's hard, obviously. I mean, the same way you described it for yourself as a child, it's something where I think for me, I always wanted to be normal or seem normal or be the same as others. Talked about how I tried every sport you could ever imagine growing up. And for me, I seemed to have this affinity towards sports that were let's say, dumb for someone who's legally blind. I tried baseball, I tried hockey, I tried lacrosse. Like, I tried all these sports that you're like ridiculous. And they were. They absolutely were. But I was, picked last for every single one of them. I was terrible at all of them. And eventually I found football. But, all of that growing up, not getting the help that I needed when I wanted it, but it was ended up being the help that I needed.
Yeah.
Struggling in sports, struggling in aspects of school and confidence, it shaped me. And so as hard as that was, of sitting in that and say, why can't I be the same, or why can't I do this as easy as anyone else?
Mm.
It's hard to see it at the time, but it's, I'm grateful.
Talk about being picked last.
Yeah.
I think half of our listeners have no clue what you and I are talking about. Kids who might have been picked last from time to time, and others are still seared by the
Yeah.
experience of being the last one off the bench onto somebody's team. What was it like for you as a little one being picked last? What did it remind you of who you were at that time?
I think it just continued to, tell me that I was different, tell me that I couldn't do it, tell me that others didn't think I could do it. And it built that identity of being legally blind controls my life and controlled what I could and couldn't do, what I thought and perceived about myself, and what others thought and perceived about me.
Mm,
And those challenges are always a part of us. They always will be, but they don't have to be all of us and they don't have to define us. But as a kid, being picked last was one example of so many things that
totally.
built on what defined what I thought defined me and allowed being legally blind to control so much of me.
So when did that begin to shift, Aaron?
It's a good question because there's not one specific instance, but I'd say there's many along the way. And so the first one was sophomore year of high school. I was a third string JV athlete, and I was just had enough. I was tired of not playing, tired of struggling in school, struggling with confidence, and I wanted to be successful. And so there were two things I had to do. The first one was think differently. Think differently about what I could do and how I perceive myself. How could I get on the field? I was not going to be from Boston. I wasn't going to be the next Tom Brady. I wasn't going to find the receiver down the field, but I could be a long snapper.
Yeah.
And I realized if I got really good at this niche position, maybe I could play. The second part was instilling this belief and this mindset that I carry today of if you do what nobody else is willing to do, you'll get results that nobody else is able to get. For the next 3 years of high school, I woke up at 5 a.m. every day. I went to school and I practiced long snapping for an hour and a half. I went to class, I went to practice with the team, and then I lifted weights for an hour and a half every night. And I knew that these things wouldn't get me better tomorrow, next week, or next month, but if they compounded over time,
Yeah.
they would add up.
Talk about the motivation. I mean, I have four children, and today was our first day back to school after a
Yeah,
Christmas vacation. And man, I needed fireworks inside the house to get them out of bed today. Like these kids sometimes are difficult to rise and to
yeah,
attack the day. You were getting your dad out of bed.
yeah.
You were the first one out the door, and you were doing this as a kid who, at that point, wasn't that gifted physically in football. So, where's this motivation coming from?
So there's a difference between what I talk about called internal and external motivation. And when I say that, I think external motivation is fleeting. It's not going to get you to your goal long term. Now, if I go to the gym, if I want to squat a heavy weight, external motivation, something that's going to piss me off, someone that can stand there and yell at me, that will help me through that rep. But is that going to help you accomplish your long term goal? No. Internal motivation is why do you want to do it for you? It's
Right.
not because someone else says you can do it or can't do it. Not because someone else thinks you should or shouldn't. It's why do you want to do it for you? And when you have that why and that belief so deep of, for me, it was football. It was why do I want to play this? Because I want it for me. I loved it so much. I wanted to get better. It wasn't about what others said I couldn't do. It was I wanted to do this for me. And what you said about my dad, I mean, that's going back to my parents. Like my dad would never come to me and say, "Do you want to go practice the next morning?" But
Right.
some days my mom would drive me, but oftentimes my dad would because he would catch my snaps. If I went to him in the morning or the night before, I was like, "Can we go practice?" He would go, but it wasn't his job to push me. It was his job to help me if I wanted to push myself.
Mm. You mentioned third string JV long snapper. This doesn't have a college level NFL type player written all over it. So you are starting off at the bottom rung and you're legally blind.
Yeah.
And yet you keep stepping forward. You keep showing up at 5 a.m. You keep doing the snaps. Just talk about the process that kept you going during those early days.
It was wanting to get better. And I think that I started to see things change in my life because, when you're waking up and you're doing that early and you're making the commitment and you're showing up every day and there's barely anyone at school, and
Right.
you start lifting more weights. I was lifting weights before that, but really taking it more seriously and lifting for a long time and doing it every day, seeing that transform who you are and transform your confidence, it changed in me first, I think, mentally before the physical, because I
Mm.
started to grow this confidence. I started to grow, who I was and have that belief in myself. And then I started to see that change where I became bigger, I became faster, I became stronger, I became better.
You mentioned earlier that your father would be the one who would not push you out the door, but would be with you walking out the door if you desired it. And I'm amazed by your dad. I'm obviously floored by you. That's why I'm interviewing you today. I'm so moved by your life. And yet what you and I recognize is our lives would have not amounted to what they have
Yeah.
had it not been for others in our lives. And one of the great heroes, as I see it in your life, is your dad. So how did the 5 a.m. wake up calls and these early mornings on the pitch when everybody else was sleeping bring the two of you together?
Yeah, I mean, I think he enjoyed it. Of course, waking up early, I don't think he misses getting up at 5 a.m. with me, but he loved sports. He wanted to spend time with me. I mean, whenever we had games, he would always volunteer. He wanted to be the people who did the chains on the sidelines and doing that at football games. I think he was a little upset they wouldn't let him do that at Tulane and college games, but I can understand why they need professionals for that.
Right.
But, I think he just enjoyed being around that to a degree. And if I was really going to push myself, he was willing and happy to support.
You get better, you mentioned, and then you get better, and then you make varsity. And the entire time you're improving, you keep shouting from the rooftops, and I will play in college. Were there people on your team, coaches, who believed that you actually could, or were they just kind of saying, "Oh, what a sweet kid, man. Good for him for thinking he
It's a
might."
it's a really good question. So in the mornings, there was usually it was me, my dad, and then oftentimes there was four other people there. It was a kid who I was friends with at the time. He ended up going to a private school. He was a little younger than me, but he was a quarterback and he ended up playing at UCLA. And he played for the Dolphins and his dad played for the Patriots. My friend's, I guess, his sister as well, doing basketball in the morning. She's actually in the WNBA now. And so I think like I looked up to his dad a lot, where, you obviously, having kids, that, your kids aren't going to listen to you as well as they listen to others. If I had a bad snap and my dad told me, even though I was grateful for him coming, when you're 16 years old, you're not going to listen to him as much as when
Right.
my friend's dad, who played in the NFL, who I idolized or envied and wanted to be, yells across and goes, "Aaron, give me 50 push-ups. That was a terrible snap."
Right.
Um, and so I think that that was a huge impact. I think he believed in me because he saw the work that I was willing to do every day. I think a lot of other coaches, I don't know. I mean, I think some of them did. I think my high school coach, he at first was probably a little skeptical, but he knew that I was showing up every single day. And so I think his belief around it grew be the more he saw that I was willing to put in.
As I was preparing for this conversation, I was thinking about a coach who is one of the best trainers for teaching NFL kickers how to kick field goals. And he's in a wheelchair. So the very thing you would think you need to kick field goals, this guy can't do. And he credits that as one of like his superpowers. Like it allows him to be even more focused on what you actually need to do to be a
Mhm.
great kicker in the NFL. So this next question is a little bit odd, but I think it hopefully will ring true. What was the advantage to being legally blind as a long snapper?
I had to focus so much on feel. The second I let the football go, through my hands, I could tell you where was it going to hit the punter, the right hip, the left hip, the stomach, the chest. I knew the second it left my fingertips where it was going. And that doesn't mean that others can't do that as well, but oftentimes long snappers will practice, with their eyes shut, because if you can do it with your eyes shut, you can do it with them open. You shouldn't have to look at the target, look at the punter to be able to have a perfect snap. And for me, I think that that really helped of just teaching me that muscle memory really early on.
For those who may not know football as well as you and I do, and you know it far better than I, but from the moment you snap a ball as a long snapper, what happens to you? So you snap the ball back, then what do you experience at the line of
You have to
scrimmage?
snap, you have to kick back and like pop up pretty quickly, and then you have to block. And so, you want to get the ball back there very quickly, but then you need to pop up so you can start blocking the defensive lineman who's coming.
Did the kids you were playing against know that you were legally blind?
No, at least not that I know of. I didn't want them to know. I would go out there, and whether it was high school or college, I would just go out there and hit them. Obviously, my teammates did, but I didn't want anyone else to know. I don't think my coaches ever would say anything. Trust me, I was flattened a couple times by big defensive linemen. I don't think that if they knew, they did not care.
All right, so you become expert in high school at this, and you reach out to every single college program in the NCAA to say, "Hey, I am your next long snapper. Give me a try." To talk about that process.
Oh, my opinion was I was ranked pretty highly as a long snapper and just a football player in Massachusetts at that point. My opinion is if they weren't going to come to me, because they weren't coming to me, I was going to do whatever it could. Again, it was how do I think differently? And so the solution that I came up was my first lesson in sales. I decided to annoy the crap out of every college coach in the country. And by every coach, I mean like I probably cold called Nick Saban 70 times. Like every coach. I started cold emailing them any school that I could just somehow get someone to drive me to that was like relatively close-ish. I would just go and I'd sit in a coach's office or in a football office. I'd wait there till they would kick me out or sit down with me.
Mm,
Because my understanding was, I don't know, there's hundreds of schools. I only need one person to say yes.
right.
One coach to say yes. I don't need 50. I need one.
Well, you got your one. It's not in Massachusetts. It's a little bit farther south.
Yeah.
Go to St. Louis, get on the Mississippi, and just keep going south. You go to Tulane University. Talk about Tulane.
I transparently, I can't believe I graduated that school. I can't believe anyone graduates that school. Between the food and the culture and the environment and the fun, like it's such a fun place to go. I'm actually going to be in New Orleans in like a month for a speech. I'm very excited, but I mean, it was such a fun environment to go, and just going into the locker room and having 100 other guys there, with you day one, and turning it into a family and meeting everyone and pushing yourself. I mean, it definitely a little different college experience than most people have, but it's so worth it. And as hard as some days were practicing and playing, it was a lot of fun.
Aaron, I dropped off my oldest at college a year and a half ago, and it was hard for him to get from the dorm to his first classroom, and then even more difficult to find the second classroom, and then back to his dorm. He got lost, and all
Yeah,
this taking place for a very capable 2020 visioned kid.
yeah.
You're legally blind. You're walking on the Tulane football team, and you're trying to figure out life on your own for the first time. What's that life like for you as a kid?
It's challenging. It's hard, obviously, being in a brand new environment and struggling. But one of the things that most people don't do is they don't know how to ask for help. They
Hmm.
don't know how to ask for support. It's one of the things I talk so much to companies about is how do you ask for help and why do you ask for help and the importance of asking for help. And the reason I bring that up is like if you were to drop me off at a new environment, a new college campus, and you're like, go find this class, like I'm never going to find it. I'm going to be walking around in circles for 2 days. But learning how to advocate for yourself and ask people for help to show you around where your classes are, where the dining hall is, where the facilities are, like that is something that's such an easy ask, but most people think it makes them look weak. And it doesn't make you look weak. It's confidence in showing who you are, what you can do, and where you might need a little support. If I didn't learn how to ask for help, I would have struggled so much more in that environment and so many others.
Mm, so good, man. So you ask for help, you get the help, you step forward, you keep showing up for practice, you keep elevating your game, and sophomore year you get your first chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Against University of Central Florida, I had been getting more reps, the month or two before and played for the first time. And it was exciting. It was thrilling, but you might look at that and people listening are like, oh, that's awesome. He played for the first time, first legally blind D1 athlete. Well, guess what? Freshman year, my team went 3-9, and sophomore year, we are about to go 3-9. And when you go 3-9 2 years in a row at a D1 school, your coach gets fired. And the one coach in the country that gave me a shot, like 3 weeks after I played for the first time, 4 weeks after, was gone.
Right. So this changes not only his life, but yours, because it means if you're not careful that all this work you put into this program, this team, and your career is now wasted. So before we talk about the next coach and the next game,
Yeah.
man, what's it like putting on pads, recognizing this impossible dream that you had imagined for your life is becoming a reality as you jog onto the field, as you bend down, and as you put both hands on a football and you get ready to snap that thing backward. And it's not a pity play. This
Yeah.
isn't for ESPN to say, look how great we are down here at Tulane. This is because they want the best long snapper they have, and it's you. So they send you out onto the field to go snap the ball.
I mean, it was an incredible feeling. There's nothing like running onto a field with tens and tens of thousands of people in the arena all watching. It's so much fun. And to me, it was just do the same thing that I had done thousands of times in practice. And it was focusing on that because if I focused on the environment, if I focused on the noise, I'd get nervous. You cannot be nervous or get nervous when you're a long snapper, when you're a kicker, because then that's going to make things miss. If I'm nervous and I go out there, I'm going to either roll the ball back or I'm going to overshoot the holder's head. And so for me, it's staying as calm as possible, taking deep breaths, relaxing, and just imagining it's like practice.
So you wrap up that season sophomore year as the long snapper. Your coach eventually gets fired, and you're back at square one. What's it
Yep.
like as a new coaching staff shows up at Tulane?
For me, when the new coach came in, I delayed talking to them as long as I could because I was nervous. I didn't know if they'd give me a shot. And the longer I delayed, the more fear, the more anxiety built around it. And that was challenging. And
Wow.
so eventually I had to come to this decision of like, I'm either going to quit, I'm going to transfer schools, or I'm going to go have the conversation I don't want to have. And most of the time, it's having that conversation, taking that action you don't want to do. Your goal is right on the other side of it. And you
Mm.
need to rip off that band-aid. And so when I went into the new coach's office, Coach Fritz, who's a friend of mine today, of course he was nervous. Like he had never worked with someone who's legally blind playing football, but we talked it through. We talked about like what I could do, where I might need support. He was open, and we came to an agreement that we would try spring ball. If it worked out, great. If we had to part ways, if we had to have a conversation again, sure, we would, but we would try. And for me, that's all I could ask for, is someone else to give me a shot.
I read that every single day after that coach stepped forward, you strived to remain positive, to be fully engaged, put your team first, and just
Yep.
to trust the process.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's football analogies there, but talk about how that's beneficial, not only as a long snapper, but as a leader
Yeah.
in life.
Man, I always like to give the analogy, especially when I speak in so many different environments, but I talk about it especially in high schools. I was not a captain my senior year of high school. I was not. I was the only one on that team who was going to play D1. I was not a captain, but I was a captain my senior year of a Division 1 program.
Hmm.
And what changed that was in high school, yeah, I did what was needed to make myself better, but I didn't focus as much on the team. In college, when my coaches shifted, my focus became how can I become the best leader? How can I add the most value? How can I turn this program around? That was if someone grabs a weight that's too light for them, how do I push them to grab another one? If someone struggles on a test, how do I help them and support them to study differently? Doing those little things every day in and day out, helped to build me into a better communicator, a better teammate, a better leader. And I understood that these were things that were going to last with me past football and for the rest of my life. And my coach noticed that. Not only did we never have that conversation again, but I was named a team captain my senior year because of that. And I like to give that example, especially in schools, because look, people change, people grow. Your past doesn't always have to define your future.
Hmm.
And when you do something, that you don't like, you can always change it. Do I wish, back then, was I, annoyed that I wasn't a captain in high school? Yeah. I thought that I was, the best. I was playing. I turned myself into this D1 prospect. But you know what? I wasn't just focused on others. I was focused on myself. And did that serve me for the purpose at the time? Sure. But when things changed in college, I shifted of how I could be that leader. And I think developing those skills of leadership, of teamwork, of communication just help you go to any level you want.
So good. Man, what's it like for this kid who was picked last for every single sport, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, man, the last one onto the sideline for every single sport, always as a kid, now walking out of the tunnel with a C on your chest, man. I get emotional even thinking about it, man. I'm teary-eyed. You got a C on your chest and you're about to go battle against Navy in a football game. Tell me about what that's like for you internally.
Man, I love it. It was just such a good feeling. Every game we played, especially you said Navy, Army, Navy, all those that we played because they were in our conference in the American. And those were actually some of my favorite games because we would
Sure.
go out early, the specialists, the kickers and long snappers, at halftime to warm up, and we would get to see all the flyovers and the troops on the field. It's so incredible to see. But being involved in that conference, playing those teams, we played Oklahoma my senior year when they had Baker Mayfield. Like it was just such an incredible experience to help represent my team, to see the transformation of myself, but more importantly, be at peace in turning around Tulane. Like, were we ever like super incredible when I was there? No, but I was a part of turning Tulane into what we are today.
Right.
Like when you look at those building blocks, you could see a culture shift. And, I strongly believe that I was a big part of that culture shift. And, it's amazing to see where the school, where the team has, come.
What was it like for those parents of yours up on the bleachers looking down at their baby?
I think my parents were always nervous when I was playing. They didn't want me to get hurt, but they knew that it was something that I enjoyed, that I needed for myself, and I had a lot of fun doing it. But they were definitely nervous seeing me play.
And then final thing, then we're going to leave football behind for a moment.
Yeah.
But as I've aged, a lot of friends have come up to me and talked about the impact of my presence that I did not know I was having on them when I was in college. Because my life was uniquely mine, and I just dealt with the scars and the journey to the best degree I possibly could, having no idea at
Yeah.
all that in doing that, it was actually shaping someone else's life. So I'm sure, brother, for you, as these kids, full visioned kids, are watching you go about work, you were having an effect on them back then. Have you heard some stories about that example?
It's a good question. And thinking of one specific story, I think is hard to know like where it's actually impacted others. I think one example, and I'll give you that I think really stands out. It's more kind of football still, but it fits really nicely. Is I remember one game we had what's called like the launch pad. Before like right on the sideline. Some teams have it. It's like numbered like 1 through 11, and it's where you're supposed to stand before you go on the field. So if defense is on third down, the offense runs over, they stand where they're supposed to go, like just to get ready for the next play. So
Right.
everyone's in the right place, the coaches know where they are. And there's cones around it. Basically, you're not allowed to walk through it if you're on the sideline because you're only supposed to go in there if you're going, just keep things orderly. And there were a couple cones that were like, I don't know, 3 inches off. I happened to notice it. I picked up the cones, I moved them to the right line. One of our strength coaches came over and was like, how did I know? How did you notice that? And I was talking to her, and she's like, if everyone just noticed those little details the way you do, we'd be an entirely different team.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't notice that because of my vision. I noticed that because I pay attention to the small things, and the small things matter in life.
Mm. So, man, you graduate, you get a cup of coffee in the NFL, you eventually hang up the cleats permanently, at least temporarily. They're hung up on the wall for now. Who knows what tomorrow has in store? You become a speaker. And I know you did a little bit of this in college and throughout your life, but why'd you step into speaking? What's the message you hope to deliver?
When I finished kind of the NFL stuff, I started speaking. I had a job in finance as well because, when you're 22, you need to make an income. And especially when you're starting off in the world of speaking, most people don't know this. You don't make money. You do things voluntarily, you do things for free, you do things for $200 here or there. It's not this massive payday, especially in the beginning. And I wanted to work for myself. I didn't want to work for a business for someone else. I loved the idea of entrepreneurship. Speaking was something that, I could do that. It was, I like to say the low-hanging fruit for me at the time, but I also knew that I could impact so many others. And so, my biggest message, I'd say the one that I'm proud of the most, there's three kind of messages, but the biggest one is achieving goals through adversity. And it's going into companies, schools, teams, and talking about how to build resilience. It's how to talk about gratitude. I talk a lot about how I'm thankful and grateful I was born legally blind. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Now, I have others that are around like disability awareness. I have others that are around leadership. But at the end of the day, I think the number one is how do you build resilience and use gratitude to get you through those tough times?
What would you say to someone who's in the midst of a tough time right now? It could be a kid, it could be an athlete, it could be someone who's single right now in their life and it just hasn't gone the way they wanted it to. It could be a million different circumstances that have led
Yeah.
them into a darkened tunnel, isolated,
Yeah.
but they're depleted. What's your encouragement to them?
Look, first off, it happens to all of us. It happens to me. I'm sure it happens to you, John. Like we all have tough times. We all have tough days. But guess what? Like it is part of life. And sometimes life sucks. Sometimes there are issues. But when you keep getting up and you keep falling down, you keep getting back up, you will eventually succeed. As a society, we are brought up in the wrong way. We are brought up to believe that if you get an F on a test, that it's the end of the world, and that is not true. If you get an F on a test and you don't learn from it and you keep getting the same F, okay, that's your fault. If you get
Right.
an F on a test and you go home and you talk to your parents, you learn how you can get help, and you go to your teacher and you study differently and you get more help, and then 3 months later you're getting B's or A's, that F was the greatest thing that's ever happened to you because it taught you how to change. And I think when we fall down, when we have tough times, it's taking a look at our situation, having a conversation that we don't want to have, and being hard and saying, why am I here? Accepting that this is reality, and then
Right.
figuring out how you can think differently and how you can change it. And when you do that, you can change.
And I think of the adversity you face in simply flipping the laptop on and setting up the camera just right and joining me on a show like this, and then leaving this room and going into the next thing, and just how challenging your days can be. And yet here you are with this goofy grin on your face the entire time you and I are talking. It truly is remarkable. So as you look around your life at others, what excuses do you hear others making that might bother you the most? So what excuses are your neighbors, roommates, siblings making that just infuriate you because you recognize, man, what a lie. It's just not true.
I think just either you don't have time for something or people that don't have urgency to do things or that it's too hard. I think that at the end of the day, you can always try new things. You can always try. It doesn't mean you're gonna be good at it. And so earlier in 2025, in like spring or summer of 2025, I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Am I good at it yet? No. But like, am I learning and getting better? Absolutely. Do I get crushed by black belts multiple times a week when I go? 100%. But it's a lot of fun. It's a phenomenal workout. And I know that if I do this for the next 5, 10 years, I'm going to get really, really good at it. But it takes time.
Mm. So in preparing for today, I wrote down a whole bunch of quotes that you've shared in the past that just moved me. And I'm not going to guide you through all of them because we'll be here until way past dinner time, but let's do five real quick. This is one of my favorites. Things in life happen for you, not to you. Let me say that again. Things in life happen for you, not to you.
Yeah, and they do. So many people look at challenges and they say, "Why is this happening to me? Why am I the victim?" But it happens for you. I was born legally blind for a reason, and that reason is to help and impact others. And I think when you can shift your perspective, you can learn that how those challenges happen for you.
Mm. Vision is not sight.
I mean, I think it's with that one. It's talking about, look, can I see well? No, but do I have a vision and a perspective of where I want to go and what I'm doing? Absolutely. I'm an entrepreneur. I do speaking, but I also run another business, and I have these perceptions of where I want to be in both sides of that, in the other business and my speaking. In a year from now, and 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, and how I want to impact people, and like having that vision and goal for your life is what keeps you going. It's important.
And I like this one. I did not want others to feel sorry for me. I wanted others to respect me.
Look, when I was playing football, I only did field goals and extra points in games. And that's one of the reasons why the NFL wasn't going to work out for me because they need someone who can also do punts. Because in the NFL, they always run what's called a spread style punt. And you have to release downfield and go try and make the tackle as a long snapper. In college, some teams do a spread, some people block. But for me, I pretty much always did punt or extra points and field goals because we ran a spread. And so I wouldn't do punts in games. But I would do like second string punt in practice. And my coach would always say, Aaron, don't run downfield. Like, we don't want you to get hurt. What do you think I would do every day? I would sprint downfield as fast as I could and try and hit the crap out of someone. When we were playing scout team, I would play scout team linebacker or wide receiver. I didn't care. I am the greatest scout team wide receiver Tulane has ever seen. I had so much fun doing it. But I didn't care. Like I was going to hit people and they were going to hit me hard and I was going to have fun with it and they were going to respect me because they saw what I was willing to do.
Well, maybe that's what leads to the next one. Comfort is the enemy of growth.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be comfortable and get better at what you're doing. Like it's whether you're in the weight room, whether you're playing football, whether you're in business, in school, learning from mistakes and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is what develops you as a person.
Well, man, you almost ran the gauntlet. The fifth one is try taking ownership rather than making excuses.
Yeah, I mean, it's owning the fact that you're only in certain situations because of what you did, what you didn't do. And if you want to make a change, how do you take ownership of that? I think at a young age, there's certain aspects where I think I've been fortunate enough to learn from people and be fairly successful in my business and speaking career. But at the same time, I also don't think I'm where I want to be. And I think I have a lot to learn and a lot to grow and learn from others who have done it and done better than me at it. And I think it's
Mhm.
taking ownership of, every year, what did I do well? What didn't I do well? And I think we all need to look at that for ourselves, whether it's yearly, monthly, whatever. What can we own about ourselves?
Man, it's amazing that this kid who was picked last is now being picked first. And I'm just supremely grateful that you made time for our conversation today. We wrap up every one of our conversations with what is called the Live Inspired Seven. So, Aaron, these are seven questions that tether all of our great guests together. We've had NFL quarterbacks on here and presidents and leaders, and now we've got a guy who I really look up to. So, the first question to you, my friend, is what's the most impactful book you've ever read?
That's a really good question. And the reason I say that is read books the same way as most people. I do book on tape, but even with that, I don't do it as much as others. I mean, probably maybe like Atomic Habits or something. I know that's a really good book that I enjoyed when I read that.
Well, you're like living the principles of it each day of your life. Like in about three of your answers, I heard whispers from that book, man. So, what's one positive characteristic or one trait you possessed as a little kid growing up outside of Boston that you wish you exhibited as brilliantly today?
That's a really good one. Um, I feel like I still resemble a lot of the same characteristics as I did as a kid. I think we all lose some sort of curiosity as we get older. I think I still am a curious person, but I'll say curiosity.
If your home caught fire and all living things are out, and you have an opportunity of running in and grabbing one item that matters to you, what's that one physical thing you would grab, Aaron?
So my girlfriend and I, a few years ago, had adopted a dog. It's just a really interesting coincidence how it happened. He had a pretty rough first 6 months of his life, a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, and we adopted him. We had him for 18 months, and he was our entire world in life. And unfortunately, about a year and a half ago at this point, passed away very tragically. Ever since then, we've fostered 10 dogs and helped them get to different homes. It's something that I'm super passionate about, but I would grab his ashes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous day and have a long conversation with anyone, living or deceased, who do you want to have seated next to you on a bench?
Growing up, I'd probably hate myself if I didn't say that I'd want to have a conversation with Tom Brady.
I was wondering if you go football on me. All right. Tell you what, you say growing up. So you got Tom Brady on your left. Who do you want on your right?
Um, I'm so fortunate of how close my sister and I are, and we work really well together. We're co-founders of the new business that we're running, and I mean, my sister and I are on the phone like 7,000 times a day for 30 seconds each, just like talking about different things with the business. But honestly, like I'd have my sister there as well. And honestly, I'd change it. I'd pick my girlfriend and my sister. Sorry, Tom, but I'd pick the two of them, and that's the people that mean the most to me in my life.
That's a very sweet answer. You just kicked Tom Brady off in favor of your girlfriend. So I'm glad things have been smoothed out in your world, man. What advice would you give yourself at age 20? So if you could go back in time just a couple years and whisper some wisdom your way, what would you say?
I think I'd say, dive into trying new things, outside of football. Obviously I had everything with football, but, try more with speaking, try more with other business, try more with different things, especially while I was in school. Because I think that, if you can learn and fail at a business when you're in school or at speaking or whatever, you're already in school, you're learning, no one's expecting you to grow something then. And I think that that's the perfect time to do it.
You've almost made it, man. What's the best advice you've ever received?
When I was in high school, my long snapping coach, Chris Rubio, when I committed to play at Tulane, I was called by Good Morning America to go on. And my first instinct was I told them no. And the guy was like, call me back in 2 hours. I called my coach and he was like, look, Aaron, do whatever you want, it's your call. But if you can go on and help one other kid who has a disability or someone who's in need by going on and sharing your story, then you should do it. And I called him back and I went on the next morning. And, I'm grateful that he gave me that advice.
Aaron, it has been said that all great long snappers and human beings can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
I think pushed boundaries, and made an impact.
Aaron Golub pushed boundaries and made an impact and taught others how to truly see. What a gift he was on and off the field. I just appreciate you, Aaron, being born into real challenge and teaching the rest of us how we can overcome ours. What a gift you are.
Thank you. I appreciate that, John. It's been incredible to spend time with you and your audience.
My friends, that is the life wisdom of our friend Aaron Golub. My name is John O'Leary. Today is your day. What a gift it is. Live inspired.